Hello, and welcome back to the Caregivers Journal podcast, where we're talking with real caregivers about their caregiving journeys. Welcome to the Caregivers Journal podcast. I am your co-host, Lance A. Slatton, also the host of All Home Care Matters and the author of the All Home Care Matters Official Family Caregivers Guide. Today, we have a special guest. We have Chris from Life with Grams. Welcome, Chris. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and share a little bit about my life with Grams.
Our pleasure. Do you want to take a moment for viewers and listeners who may not be familiar with you, just share a little bit about your story?
Yeah, definitely. I've been the full-time caregiver for my grandma Mary, who lives with Alzheimer's disease since March of 2017. I took her out of a nursing home and moved her into my house, and we've been navigating this journey together with a lot of love and laughter and a lot of hard times too, but it's been good.
Well, thank you for being here. And my esteemed, distinguished co-hosts, Cindy and Christina. Welcome, ladies. How are you?
We are doing well. We are doing well. Yeah, it's good to be here. We're glad to have Chris with us. We
Yes, we
follow
are.
her on her Instagram and her TikTok,
Right.
and we've been following her for a while. And we ran into her, Lance, not too long ago, a couple years ago at a caregiver conference, and I was just like, fangirling.
Fangirl.
The feelings were mutual. I was so excited.
Wonderful. Ladies, take a minute and share a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Right. We are Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. I'm a physical therapist. I'm Cindy, and have been practicing for about 30 years, mainly in home health. And our business is focused on helping caregivers and the care recipients maintain safety and independence in their homes or wherever home may be. So that's our main focus.
Yeah, and I'm Christina. I'm a speech language pathologist. My main focus in my practice was in long-term care and also caring for individuals or residents that lived in memory care communities. That was one of my favorite population to treat and work with. So.
Wonderful. Well, we're all here today to talk about caregiver stories and journeys. We're on chapter 7 of the Caregivers Journal, and Chris, we're going to be talking about your journal entry. I'm going to start it off though with just talking about what are some of the biggest challenges, not only that you're facing now, but what you faced when you first decided, you know what, Grams is coming with me and we're going to become, Insta famous, as they say.
I really just thought she was going to be my roommate at first. I didn't understand the dynamics of being a caregiver. I really didn't even label myself a caregiver until social media kind of showed me, look, you're taking care of another human being in whatever capacity that might be. So for me, it was a big adjustment just because I was 29 years old. I was a bartender. I was still pretty big into partying and just kind of living my best life. So that all changed when I realized that my grandma needed assistance and she needed me to be there for her. So yeah, it was a lot of social adjustments, a lot of financial adjustments, a lot of emotional adjustments, because not only am I taking care of someone, but I'm watching my grandma deal with a progressive disease that in itself is something that you really can't understand until you're in it. So lots of adjustments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know for myself, I never identified as a family caregiver or even really truthfully knew what a caregiver was in the truest sense of the definition. I was in the pursuit of medical school. My wife and I were newlyweds, and we get a call that my dad needed help, and of course, I think most kids would do the same thing, and I would do it again if I had to do it over. He came to live with us, and all of a sudden it's 24/7 care, and nobody said, here's some resources, here's some, networks to get tied into. Medical school, college is all, clinical, biology, chemistry. I don't like to use the P word, which is physics, hate physics.
Yeah, I don't like that one either.
But, it wasn't social media for me. I was just thinking like, okay, if I'm in my early 20s and dealing with this, there's got to be millions of people out there. We should find a way to send people into homes to help other people that are going through what we went through, not realizing there's an entire world out there. So for me, the biggest challenge on my side was just knowing that there was resources out there and being connected to them. What was your number one biggest challenge, would you say? just not knowing.
Understanding and finding help. That was really,
Yeah.
they basically say, you know, good luck, she's got dementia. Everything I brought to the doctor, everything I brought to anybody looking for help, it was always, well, that's dementia, you know, that's what she's going to do. And that was the hardest part for me, because I felt like, how is this okay? Like, how are we able to help our loved ones when people don't even understand what's going on with them? Like, I really felt like there was a lack of knowledge before the caregiver stuff, just on dementia in general. And so that put me in a really tough spot, because I wanted to help my grandma. I wanted to gain knowledge to provide the best care for her. And I didn't even know where to find that at first. You know, there was nothing I felt like that was like, here, this is for caregivers. This is for people with dementia to help you on this journey, because that's what it is. And so, yeah, it was just a lack of resources in general for everything. I was looking towards my family for help. You know, when I had to go to work, I didn't even think about outside resources until much later on in my caregiving journey.
Yeah, I know people who watch All Home Care Matters or watch the Caregivers Journal or any of our shows. You know, someone that I have the highest respect for is very involved in the field. And, you know, he had used a phrase once, and I've used it probably several dozen times since then. It's basically diagnose and adios. You know, you get that diagnosis from that physician or whoever it may be, and then you're just left, okay, what now? They don't give you the what's next. They just give you the diagnosis, and then you're left trying to figure it out from family, social media, podcast. And that's the most frustrating thing for me. I don't think any of us would be here, truthfully, if families were getting connected to the resources and support that they need. And, you know, it's always, to me, it's almost like they just passed the buck. Well, they have dementia, but I don't know, what do you expect from me now? You know, well, I expect you're going to connect me to where I can get that support and the resources I need. So aside from the challenges, though, Chris, what have you found to be some of the most rewarding moments you've experienced, you know, being a caregiver for Grams?
This has been the biggest gift of my life. I feel like I personally found purpose. Like I said, I kind of was in my late 20s, still kind of just riding the wave of life and bartending and drinking and partying. So this really helped me slow down. I am now almost 4 years sober from alcohol, and I have been able to really find purpose in my own life. So that for me has been a complete joy. My grandma is still my grandma. And so even though she has this terrible disease, she still is able to provide me love and care. And so I really feel like we were care partners for each other. I was in a time in my life where I didn't even realize that I needed her in the same capacity that she needed me. And so it was kind of a blessing. I know not many people are as fortunate to feel that way. A lot of grief comes with caregiving, but I have found a lot of joy. I do try to make the best of every day, despite the hardships. We have only grown in love, and I think that that's really important to know, that even with a progressive disease like dementia, love is still capable of growing and flourishing. And so that has been my biggest joy.
That's wonderful. So this, I'm going to play the what if game, and sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't like it, because we can't do anything about it, but somebody watching or listening might be able to. If you could go back and talk to Chris however many years ago, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself back then that you didn't know?
Oh, breathe. Definitely start off with just breathe. In the first 2.5, 3 years, I feel like I was running around. Looking back, I don't even know who that person was, because I was just in a constant state of fear, anxiety, fight or flight. Like, I was brand new to this. I didn't know how long my grandma had with her disease. I didn't know how fast it was going to progress. I mean, that's what's going on in your head constantly, all these thoughts, all these worries. So yeah, definitely slow down, breathe, and know that it might not feel like it at the time. You might feel extremely alone and isolated, but there are people out there. You are not alone. There is community and there is understanding. And places like this is where you can find it. So, you know, you have to understand that a lot of things are going to change, but it doesn't all have to be bad.
Yeah, great advice. Now, we want to talk about you for a minute. you're in your early 30s now.
Yeah, late 30s
Late
now,
30,
but
okay, well, early 30s now, and and I was in my early 20s, and you were in your 20s, and that's not always prototypical for becoming a family caregiver. And countless families we encounter, it's 1 out of every 10 that we're helping to support. It's somebody in their 20s or even 30s. Usually it's middle-aged children needing help for their parents. But one thing, regardless of age, is that family caregiver needs to be able to practice self-care, have that time for themselves to protect their own health. Statistically speaking, most family caregivers' health suffers more than the person they're caring for, because they put everything into that loved one and then they neglect everything for themselves. So let's talk a little bit about how you manage your own self-care and still be able to be a caregiver for Grams, and what you would recommend to other family caregivers who are at their wits' end and just they do feel alone, they do feel lost and overwhelmed, depression, stress, all the things that come along with that. How do you manage it, and what do you recommend to other family caregivers, Chris?
definitely finding your people, finding your community. I had a hard time struggling with the expectations of my family, since I am a grandchild and I am not the only grandchild. And there are other family members. I kind of always felt resentment towards them. And I have learned through a lot of strategies, but you have to find people that are willing to help you. So building your community, going to those support groups. Now there are great support groups. When I first started, I did feel a little isolated because I was so young, and a lot of the people in these support groups were much older. But now there are millennial support groups and there are male support groups, and you can find your kind of niche for the support you're looking for. But I think support, building that community, is number one. I wish I would have implemented these strategies earlier on, to where I could ask for help. Learn to ask for help. If the people you're expecting help from aren't showing up, find someone who's willing to show up. I think for a while there, I felt like I decided to take care of my grandma, so it was all on me, and I kind of hurt myself in that process. But taking care of yourself has to be number one. I do a lot of journaling. I go to therapy. I really feel that the support groups are very helpful, especially when you're first starting out as a caregiver, because that's where you're going to learn that, especially with dementia, some of these behaviors and things that you feel you're the only person going through, you'll be able to build on that and talk to others and realize that you're not alone.
That's wonderful advice. Did you feel extra pressure, or did you feel any certain way about asking for help, since this kind of ties into you and pride, and I'm taking this on. I don't want my my cousins or my aunts, uncles, or anyone else to feel like, oh, she can't handle it, she's already asking for help. Did that play any part in that?
It did. At the very beginning, when I had taken my grandma out of the facility, I had asked my family if they were willing to support me in this, and they all said yes. So in the very beginning, I did. When I went to work, my sister would check on my grandma. So we did kind of build a community, but nobody realized how long, no one has an expiration date. It just happens when it happens, So I think after a couple of years of that, like, the rest of the family was kind of like, okay, well, when is this going to change? We can't be wearing.
We didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, we can't. We didn't do that. So what is your plan for the future? And in-home care can be very expensive, especially if you don't have the resources to fund it. So when my family started pulling away, I felt extremely like the world was crumbling on top of me, and I didn't really know what to do. Luckily, unluckily, the pandemic happened right around then. So it was the perfect time for me to realize that I was at peak burnout. I had probably been in burnout for a good year and didn't even realize it, because I was running from one job to the next to pay for care for my grandma. And I had to work 2 jobs while in between watching her. It's a lot. It is a lot. And yeah, I did have a little bit of that resentment towards my family for a while, but we are thankfully now in a good place, and we've worked it out. And I have found other resources of people who are willing to help and able to help. No harm to my family. They just are not physical caregivers. They can do the financial side. They can cook dinner. Caregiving can come in many ways.
Right.
So people can help out in other capacities.
And I love that you said that. Before I go to my last question and turn it to Cindy and Christina, I'm just so thankful you said that, because the families we encounter with our company, there's a sibling, the son probably doesn't want to bathe or help to groom or toilet mom, right? And I wouldn't either. But that doesn't mean there's not other roles that they can play that's still caregiving, whether it's, ordering the groceries, lining up doctor's appointments, making sure the bills are all being paid timely. There's a lot of different ways that family members can help. If hands-on caregiving isn't their thing, they shouldn't feel ashamed of that. It's just like, cooking is not my thing. I can't cook, so don't ask me to, but it's kind of the same concept. So yeah, there's so many different ways that family members can come together and help in a way that plays to their strengths and not their weaknesses and their level of comfort. Finally, have you found for yourself any resources or support groups that have really made a positive, good, helpful difference in your life and your caregiving journey?
Yeah, I love the support from Hilarity for Charity. It's Seth Rogen's company. I really enjoyed that because they geared their support groups at first for like a younger audience. And so that was really helpful for me because, again, when you're in your 20s, life is a lot different than when you're in your 50s and maybe have a partner or have your life kind of planned out. I was at the brink of figuring that out when I became a caregiver. So I found it really helpful to find those younger support groups for myself. And I have just been blessed now with social media that I feel like every day I hop on Instagram or TikTok and I have my support and my community there for me. And I like to build on that too. So I always welcome people to come and join the community.
How about local resources that, let's say, you're really sick or you have to go in the hospital or you're just not able to be there for grams on a particular day because it's something that you can't avoid. How about any local resources, like tangible ones that you can go to that can come to you, or what would you do in that situation?
In that situation, for me, I'm lucky that my sister, when I was living in Chicago, lived around the corner and she was very willing to help me. I did actually end up in the hospital about 2 years ago. I got really sick and my sister jumped in and helped out. But I know that the Alzheimer's Association has always been really good locally where I lived, especially. They are always doing outreach and always offering support. Local Christian services around the area too. They offer some respite grants. We're in hospice now, so that is beneficial for us. They offer respite if I were to need that as well. So yeah, they're out there. You have to find them.
Gotta find them. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, diagnose and adios. You shouldn't have to find it. It should be provided. And that's just, that's my soapbox that I won't get off anytime soon. I'm going to turn it over to the ladies, Cindy and Christina, but I also want to tell viewers and listeners, stay tuned at the end of the episode for the Adaptive Equipment Caregiving Corner Tip of the Month. Ladies?
That's right. Well, Chris, again, we are so happy to have you here and, hear about your experience. I want to go back to when you were talking to before we got on here about, you said your grandmother had made your Halloween costumes when you were younger and you had that relationship with her. So how have you kind of, and then you said, there's so much love and she's giving you guys are giving and receiving love from each other. And how is that relationship as her caregiver now changed from her granddaughter? Or have you been able to make a balance for yourself in doing that or in that realm?
I really feel like it's been a balance and that I've been able to kind of never steer away from being her granddaughter. I kind of put myself in the mindset of how she took care of me as a child. I needed assistance, I needed help, but she was my grandma and that's what she provided for me. She provided that safe space. And so when I became her caregiver, when she moved in with me, I just wanted it to feel as normal as possible. Although for me, changing my grandma and helping her eat is not something that I ever would have expected to do, but it was really an act of love and almost a way of saying thank you to her. So for me, it was always just combined and connected. Yes, I'm her caregiver, but I will always be her granddaughter first. And so I try to nurture that relationship throughout our years as care partners.
Sweet.
Yeah, that is. I really like that because, we hear a lot about caregivers kind of losing their own sense of who they are in that relationship when it changes, especially with the Alzheimer's, dementia population. It's interesting too. I love how you guys kind of interact with each other. We watch you on Instagram, and it seems like one of the big things is still making it. Making the person aware that they are being heard, they are being seen, even though this is a progressive disease and things change significantly. So how would you tell others as caregivers, just to make sure that doesn't get lost in the process, that this person, your loved one, somehow becomes somebody different, a patient or whoever you want to, whatever you want to say, and still remains that vital person that you want to make sure that they are seen and heard?
You have to give the love. I think that sometimes we get into this as caregivers motion of doing the job and we forget the humanity level of it. And so that was one thing as my grandma's caregiver that I never wanted to lose. I was a teenager when I lived with my grandma and she took care of her mother with Alzheimer's. Her mom lived in a facility and I just watched the way that my grandma nurtured her mom, whether she could speak or not, whether she knew who she was or not. My grandma just always provided that loving touch, that loving care. And I like to use this analogy sometimes, especially dealing with dementia, but a lot of times I get people who can't separate the two because their loved one is now so different than they used to be. But I try to think of it as almost like an improv game. I take every day as kind of like a new journey and what's the fun gonna bring today? Like you have to get through it for yourself. So however you manage it, but that's kind of what worked for me. When you have a baby, I think a lot of times people don't realize the baby when it's born can't say mommy or daddy, but it loves you. It shows that it loves you. Aunts and uncles too. You feel love from that child, even if they can't do anything for you or provide for you. So I just try to keep that mindset that this is still my loved one, and simple things like a handhold or a kiss on the cheek, touch. They might not, words can go away, but physical touch and love is expressed. And so I think that just trying to always remember, even though it's so different now, they are still capable of feeling. And so if you can give them just an ounce of the love that they gave you when you were a child, it can help a little bit. That's just kind of what has worked for us, clearly. But yeah, also with dementia, things change, words change. They might not know who you are. Putting all of that to the side and focusing on the emotion. My mom or my grandma has called me my mom's name, her sister's name, mommy, even daddy before,
Right.
So those things, I know that when she says those things, that at least it's coming from a place of love too. And so, yeah, that's just kind of how we view it.
I love hearing that, and I love how you are kind of taking that on and making it an improv. I love that. I love that because it's very true. It can be very true. Every single day can be very different. I really like that. The other question that I wanted to kind of talk to you about is when you decided, there's a big struggle with individuals in deciding, are we going to put them in care, long-term care? Are we going to bring them home? That is a struggle that everybody goes through. And how did you, a lot of people will look at you and say, wow, good job, you did that. And I commend you on doing that as well. But how would you tell other people, How do you navigate that, trying to decide, am I going to put them in a long-term? And she was in for a little while, and now she's home. And there's a lot of feelings of guilt, there's got to be, as far as if you're putting them in long-term care. So what would you give caregivers as far as your opinion on how to navigate that for yourself?
Shutting out the outside world and other people's opinions, because you have to do what's best for you. I'm able to take care of my grandma in this capacity, but my mom, who she lived with before she went into the facility, my mom did it for 2 years, and then unfortunately it became too much. My mom has her own medical needs and needing assistance. And so I think that whatever choice you make is a hard one, and you have to do what's best for you and your loved one. The whole, I don't like when people view me as like, oh, you're doing nobody would do this. No, it's that I'm capable of doing this, and I have found what's worked for us. If you try it and it doesn't work, there's no giving up. There's no failure. Caregivers come in so many capacities, and wherever your loved one lives, you can still show up for them. So I think that that's a big one, is that it's just where they're living. You can still be their caregiver. You can still show up. It's okay if you can't do it in the home. Our country is not set up with resources really to provide in-home care in a way that's sustainable for a long time too.
Right,
so,
right.
You really, I think the biggest one for me is not listening to other people, and that there is no right or wrong answer. The right or wrong answer comes from you, and that's all that really matters.
Right. We talk to a lot of caregivers. We both talked to a lot of caregivers throughout the years, and that comes up time and time again. And it's just like, we don't know what's going to be the right thing. And I totally agree with you. You've really got to take a look at what is going to be best for you. And some people are like, well, that's selfish. You're thinking about yourself. But you know what? If you don't think about, you're the caregiver.
That's right.
If you don't think about yourself, then nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And we talk to people about the fact that you really have to figure out, can you do this? If this is all consuming for you, and you lose that position of as a granddaughter or as a daughter, as a son or whoever, it might be something to think about, is to let somebody else do that care so you can then assume that role that you are supposed to have, So there's all kinds of different ways to look at it. And I appreciate you sharing that as well.
Yeah. Chris, we follow you on your TikTok and on your Instagram both. And I appreciate the openness that you have, that relationship with your grandma, that you allow other people to see. And I think kind of goes back to what you were talking about like those first time you were a caregiver, you didn't know what was out there. And I think you're really reaching a lot of people and helping a lot of caregivers understand that it doesn't have to look the same way as yours, or what they're seeing maybe on other social media, or maybe what they saw their parents give. I applaud you. Some of your videos and stuff, in your lives that you do, you get some trolls out there, and I really find a lot of value in your ability to stand up for your grandma and stand up for yourself as a caregiver. And so I want to applaud you for doing that. And I just think the world of you as far as that's concerned. So because you do get a lot of that feedback, we'll call it. Can you dispel any kind of misconceptions that you're getting, that you're hearing? Can you dispel any of those about caregiving?
A lot of the nasty stuff I get on the internet is all because I'm sharing such a personal journey. People don't think that people with dementia, should be seen this way. I think my grandma is beautiful in every capacity.
I love watching her do her hair.
Yes.
Yeah, she's got an energy and a light about her. And that's her own, that's who she is. That's who she's always been. So that's always been my forefront, is honoring my grandma and what she wanted to give to the world. And I know that changing Alzheimer's and dementia is a passion of hers, and it always has been, because she had to watch her mother suffer in such a big capacity. So yeah, this is all always done out of love. I feel like if you watch any of our videos and ever think anything differently, that's kind of crazy, because it's just, yeah, we just want better for caregivers. I appreciate you saying that, because I open, my life up to everybody and anybody, and not all caregiving is going to look like mine. Trust me, I get it. I know we're like we have fun and we're cutesy and, we do all the things, and that's not how it is 99% of the time. So while I do show the positives, I think that also on my social medias, especially TikTok, you get to see that every day this is hard. I'm stressed. I'm tired. I'm a human too. I have emotions too. I have feelings too. And it's okay to feel your own feelings, and it's okay to be over caregiving sometimes, or, you feel that burnout, and that's totally fine. But yeah, people are always going to judge you no matter what you do. I think that goes back to caregiving too. You got to turn out the outside voices, because when you become a caregiver, family members, friends, strangers on the internet are all going to tell you how they think you should be doing something. Even myself, if you watch me on the internet, I'm just speaking from my experience. Do what works for you, and you have to figure that out. Trial and error and making it work for you, because we're all different people. We all process things differently. We all like different things. So, that's the way life goes. Not everything is going to be the same, especially with dementia. If you know one person with dementia, you know one person. There are hundreds of different kinds, and the same way we all learn and process and like different things, when our brain is failing us, that all happens in different ways too. So
I love that.
Figure it
I love
out.
that.
Bravo.
And I applaud you for that. Chris, on your lives and your videos and stuff too, I also see your other family members, and I see your mom. She comes to visit sometime, and you said that she stayed with your grandma, stayed with your mom for a little while, and that she's got her own things. And earlier we talked about other family members playing different roles, and it still makes them a caregiver. They're still a caregiver. From your experience, how have you and your family kind of divided those roles for each family member? Have you, and how have you? If you have, then how have you done that?
Yeah, 100%. So when I first took my grandma out of the facility, only my sister and I lived in Chicago. My mom actually lived in South Carolina. So my mom couldn't really do anything hands-on anyway, but my mom is the most organized person ever. So right off the jump, she was like, I'll handle the paperwork and I'll handle the appointments. So my mom, those first few years, my mom was making all the doctor's appointments, making all the scheduling, doing all of that. She would also send care packages, so she would send grandma a new sweatshirt or a blanket or just little things throughout, the months for us. And I think that really, really was helpful. I am not a phone call person. I'm a millennial, so I ain't. So my mom really was able to take the reins on that. And then my sister was my part-time caregiver. I did freelance photography on the weekends. My sister's a school teacher, so on the weekends she would watch my grandma while I went and made an income. And so for a while we really were just kind of partnering it like that. My mom to this day still is making the phone calls.
That's awesome. Good. That's good. So you have other siblings. She has other grandchildren. Do they have roles that they play in her care?
So that's basically our care team. Unfortunately, I have another sister who washed her hands when my grandma no longer recognized her. And that happens sometimes. She said it was too painful for her. And in her mind, she grieved the grandma she once had. So we don't have any connection or, any help from that sibling. But we're all different people. We all make the choices for ourselves. And so, I'm very fortunate and lucky that my sister in Chicago was able and capable to help for as long as she was able to help. In the February of this year, my grandma had an accident and ended up in the hospital for a while. And I think that's kind of when my family started being a little hands off because she's much more fragile. And I think that they got to witness that and it kind of scared them a little bit. And so I don't hold any resentment towards them. They've done the best that they could do. And I'm proud of them as they are proud of me. So
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I love that.
Mhm.
It took a while to get there, though. I do have to say,
Yeah.
a lot of therapy.
Yeah, it's not an overnight thing, that's for
That's
sure.
No,
right.
I've been doing this 7.5 years, and let me tell you, I didn't talk to my mom for like 6 months about 2 years ago because I just wanted her to watch my grandma. So
Yeah, it's hard on the family dynamics.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Chris mentioned that your grandma was on hospice. And so I just kind of want to touch on that just a little bit. How do you see your caregiver role in the future, as far as, when your grandma is gone? Will you continue to be an advocate for caregivers, or just like, when I'm done, and I'm just gonna turn around and run? So yeah, how do you see, do you see yourself playing a continued advocate role for caregivers?
this is who I am now. I feel like I could never escape. Caregivers are my people. I love connecting with caregivers. People always ask me, are you going to be a caregiver? You'd be so good. I will never give care again. That I know for a fact. The only person I want to take care of is myself.
Right.
But I definitely want to advocate. I definitely want to bring awareness and education. And I don't want to leave the world of caregiving. That really, I have found my people, my purpose. And that is something that I will always be passionate about. I do have some plans for the future. It's something that you should think about, especially when your loved one enters hospice. So I am a photographer by trade, and I would love to travel and take family photos of people living with dementia or other illnesses that maybe don't always go to photo shoots or want to have their photo taken, but I would like to make that more accommodating and accessible for people. And I think that it's really important because I take all the pictures. And I think that it's really important, though, because I mean, even now my grandma's still here, but I look back to 3 years ago, 7 years ago, and the journey changed. But I'm so thankful to capture those moments. So I would love, to still be in the caregiving world in some capacity.
Excellent. Well, let me ask you one last question here, Chris. Is there anything that we can do for you, because as professional caregivers, or in advocates, for sure, caregiver advocates, is there anything that we could do for you that you can think of that would be helpful?
I think as far as like professionals and caregivers is just having that open communication, having that space is always really important to learn from. I think that with occupational therapy, speech therapy, I think as caregivers, we don't realize that a team could be and should be involved. My grandma had a speech language pathologist for 2 years coming to the house, helping her. And I think that really helped us get to where we are today, because if we didn't have that component, or I didn't even know that a speech language pathologist was able to help us, thanks social media, but I didn't know that was even a thing for people with dementia. So I think that professionals just in general, just keeping that line of communication. Hey, have you tried an occupational therapist? Have you tried this? Because we don't know.
Yeah.
So
It really does take a village. I mean, they say it takes a village to raise a child, but I think it really takes a village to help at any stage in life, and especially with caregivers who are dealing with people, caregiving to their loved ones that have, dementia. So it really, really helps to know that they're out there, but you don't know what you don't know, right?
yeah, definitely.
Very true. All right. Well, we want to turn it back over to Lance here. I think we're going to kind of wrap things up, but you may have one more question. Is that right, Lance?
Yeah, I just, before I close this out, Chris, I want to ask you a question and get something from your perspective, because this really zeroes in on what you and Grams are doing. We love your content. We love how you're showing, really an intimate inside view of your day-to-day with Grams. We, about a year and a half ago, at All Home Care Matters, we did a huge panel discussion with 9 different leading authoritative figures in the world of dementia education and academia and research. one of the questions that really came up in my mind is, and I don't know if you or Cindy and Christina have seen this. There's some people that will film people. It's very distasteful. It's almost belligerent. It's abusive, and it's all negative. But it's not even their caregiver or their granddaughter or daughter doing it. It's people in facilities or in stores, and it's showing people that can't help themselves in the worst possible light. It's very unflattering, and it's so distasteful. So we did a whole panel, and it was called The Ethics of Dementia and Social Media. And what we did, we had a head of the medical school on, one of the leading medication researchers. I mean, it was kind of a who's who of the world of dementia. And in fact, a couple months ago, myself and one of the panelists were reached out to by a very well-known university here in the States, because they were actually doing a research paper on it, and they said the only thing they could find online was our episode.
Wow.
Okay. So we had actually, in preparation, we'd reached out to LinkedIn, Twitter, Meta, all of the platforms. What is your policy on posting content like this? They're obviously an adult, but as we all know, sometimes an adult with dementia is not competent to make informed or educated decisions and to give consent. And we actually had Dr. Jennifer Butte, who is a well-known physician in the UK, happens to be living with dementia. On that panel, she was the only person with dementia. Her take was, I'm obviously the only person here that has dementia, and unless I okay it or give consent, I never, for good or bad, want my likeness, my video, my voice, anything about me put on social media without my consent. What is your take? Because you are who you are because of social media and Grams, and you're obviously doing it there. And this isn't directed at you, but I want your opinion on it. What should be done about all of these social media platforms allowing this content to be put up there, and it's not taken down, I guess, unless somebody's really raising a fit about it? Because, my whole take is, if my grandma, my mother, whoever it is in a facility of any nature or in their own home, and their person charged with caring for them is saying, oh, you know what, nobody's going to believe what my person's doing today, I'm putting it, unless I'm connected, following them, or friends with them, I will never be the wiser. And where's the protection for these people, innocent people, who can't help that they're diagnosed with dementia and maybe not competent to know otherwise? Where's the line for you, Chris, when you see that? Because I'm assuming you've also probably seen it at some point. And my whole thing is, it should be on the social media platforms to monitor that. Because like with our YouTube show and with this show, when our team uploads videos to YouTube, for instance, you have a bunch of questions. Does it have, and you got to check, it doesn't contain any of this, but it never asks you anything about an adult who is not in the capacity to provide consent. Is it okay to post this online? Give me your thoughts on that. I was just curious because you were, talking about your reels and stuff, and we've shown some here in the episode, and we'll probably show a couple more. That's positive and it's encouraging. Your family supports it. Your grandma supports it. But what if you were a caregiver for your Grams and your family doesn't know you at all? And Grams, you're posting some of Grams' less flattering moments, or moments that, if she was able, would never in a million years want shared with the rest of the world.
So I think that's important. An aspect of it is knowing the person that you're caring for. My grandma gave informed consent. We made our Instagram together back in 2017. I actually was in a Wall Street Journal article about this a few years ago with another TikToker who posts their loved one. And I think that, there are adult protective services came to my house because of my TikTok. I had adult protective services called on me, and they found nothing wrong with the content that we post. They also saw that my grandma had given informed consent. She had a living will. She understood the capacity of going viral. And so I never felt uncomfortable because I respect my grandma and who she is. I think sometimes now the virality of the world, everyone wants to be seen. And I think that is a negative. I've seen some things on TikTok that I go, ooh, like your loved one don't look comfortable. Like my grandma always looks comfortable. If she doesn't look comfortable, I turn the camera to me. She don't need to be falling asleep on camera, for what reason? So I think that there's a tact level to it. And I think that like the family aspect matters. But if anyone in a facility ever filmed my grandma, or even, we traveled across the country this past summer.
Right.
We went to a couple of rest stops and my grandma had a couple of outbursts. If I ever were to see anyone with a camera while my grandma's having a meltdown, I would end up in jail because I would miss it. So I definitely think that people with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia deserve that dignity and respect. And I think that varies for everyone, because I know people who don't have dementia who don't show up on the internet. They are a cartoon face. People are all different. And I think that that's another aspect that we have to understand too, because that's a big thing I hear all the time. Your grandma would never. My grandma wanted to, because my grandma saw her mom not be treated like a human. And so she wanted to show that no matter where I am in life, I deserve to be treated like a human. But yeah, it's a very sensitive subject. And I have seen adult protective services show up at other caregivers' houses on TikTok. And I've seen a few of those TikToks vanish because they probably found stuff that wasn't appropriate. My grandma's finances, her physical being, her well-being was all checked by adult protective services, not once, but twice, because I'm pretty popular on the internet.
You are.
But I think that just goes to show, I'm thankful that we're able to share. And I know that there are millions of people out there who need to see not just the negative. We know that there's bad to dementia, but I think that, you have to be tactful, you have to be tasteful, and you have to know the person that you're filming, That's in all capacities, dementia or not. I think that some of these videos of people filming people in their worst moments is just horrible. We're all humans.
Yeah. And that's really what our panel was about, Chris. It wasn't really so much the family, right? Because that's a family decision. Ours was if you weren't, Life with Grams, and you were a granddaughter and Grams is somewhere else and you guys hired help to come in to take care of her, or she's placed in a facility for her care, and the staff or the caregivers are filming her and putting it up, there's such a small chance that the family would ever become aware of it, because you're probably not connected with whoever that staff person is. I put it on the platforms to put the protections in place so it never gets to the point where APS has to come and do an investigation. You know what I mean? Like that's my thing. And I'm talking about things where, they're getting just really, neglected and really abused. And we couldn't get a very satisfactory response from the social media platforms. And that was just very, disheartening, because, there's those other check marks you got to check, if it's alcohol, drugs, firearms, children, they have those safeguards in place. But what about for the people that can't safeguard themselves? That's my concern.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
I agree. I mean, these social media platforms, they like the money, they like the views. And when that happens,
it's the Wild West. I mean, it really is the Wild West, and, I'm so thankful that you're showing such a positive light on, your Grams and you and, what you guys are going through. And hopefully that light is shining out the darkness of what other people are doing. Because there's just no place for any of our loved ones or anyone in society to be, really exploited in a negative way when they can't help themselves, and there's no one there like a Chris or, another loved family member to protect them from that. And it's just very unfortunate.
I agree. 100%.
So, all right. Any parting words, Chris, before we go?
Oh, this has been lovely. I love caregivers. I love everyone involved with caregiving, and I'm always happy to share and talk about my life with Grams, and I'm thankful to have been here today.
Oh, we're thankful to have you, and it's at Life with Grams on TikTok and on Instagram, and your website is lifewithgrams.info. So everybody give her a follow. If you're not following her already, visit the website. Chris, thank you so very much for your time and, sharing you and Graham's story with us and with the caregivers.
Thank you. And to all caregivers, if you ever need a friend, just reach out. I'm always a DM away. So
that's awesome. Very cool.
Very cool. All right. And now we have our Adaptive Equipment Caregiving Corner tip of the month.
So Christina, on our social media, a lot of times we have people talking about difficulty with gripping. That's a big thing out there. And what we want to show today is if you take a look at what you're trying to grip, whether it's a pencil, a pen, a utensil, what we want to do is build up the surface area and make that grip so that you're not having to pinch down in a small way, like holding onto a spoon or something like that.
Yeah, it can be really painful for some people, especially if you have arthritis, or sometimes people with hypermobility, so their joints don't stay in.
Right. So the more you can build that up and the bigger surface area that you can use to grip, the better. So what we're going to show you is a couple of things here that you can do at home. The first one I want to show you is we went to the hardware store and just got, I think this is a 1/4 inch pipe insulation. So this is just the gray stuff. And what you can do is take a piece of this. Now this is self-adhesive elastic tape. We love this. Keep this around the house. You can use it for all kinds of things.
We have several rolls in our junk drawer.
That's right, exactly. So what I'm going to do first is put a little bit of this around my spoon so it doesn't slide. So this is just going to add some friction to my spoon here. So I'm going to just put that. This tears, now you can use the scissors, or that tears pretty easily. Okay, so it's like that. Then I'm going to take my pipe insulation and put it right over my spoon, wrap it around like that. And then again, I'm going to take my lovely pink elastic tape, which again, I love so much.
Yeah.
And
they
just
they sell stuff like this online, but why? When you could just make it yourself,
You could just make it yourself, yep. So what I've got here, as you can see, is a built-up handle, and that is going to ease the amount of pressure you're having to use when you're trying to grip a utensil.
And add extra friction because of the
as far as the tape,
I love it.
So let's show them another idea too to build up the surface of a utensil.
Okay. So that tennis ball, we've gone ahead and we cut a slit in it.
Yes, so you've got a little bit of a slit in the tennis ball. What you're going to do, and of course we always say you've got to be very careful in doing something like this with a knife. You've got to be careful of that. But you take a spoon or the utensil, you slide it right into that tennis ball, and then you have this nice big surface area where you can hold on to that utensil. Okay?
We had a viewer reach out to us and said that her dad really enjoys ice cream.
Right.
But his arthritis, it was hard for him to hold the spoon. So we suggested that they use a tennis ball.
Right.
And they sure did it right away. And they were able to, she took a picture and sent it to us of her dad enjoying another bowl of ice cream. So.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today here at the Caregivers Journal podcast, where we're talking with real caregivers about their caregiving journeys. We look forward to seeing you again here next month.